we bring you the unvarnished truth of law enforcement. This broadcast features unfiltered, unedited, and completely raw footage. Join us as we step onto the front lines of justice, providing a transparent view of the critical moments that shape our society.
Sir, keep your hands where I can see them.
I'm not moving. My hands are up.
Back up, right there. Don't reach for anything.
I'm cooperating. Please stay calm.
Hey, we're filming this.
The body camera clicked on at 4:12 p.m. Officer Darren McKee was 2 hours into his shift when he saw a black SUV roll through a four-way stop near the edge of West Haven, an upscale suburb where manicured lawns met tight community patrols. The vehicle didn't run the stop sign. It didn't swerve. Nothing overt, but something about it made McKee tap the brakes and flip a U-turn. "Suspicious lane change," he said into the radio. His cruiser pulled up behind the SUV and lit up. The sirens were quiet, just flashing reds and blues against brick facades and wrought iron gates. Antoine Reddick, a black man in his early 40s, pulled over promptly. Calm, no sudden movements. Two hands stayed planted on the steering wheel. His window rolled down slowly. His eyes forward, McKee approached like a man walking into a gunfight, one hand on his belt, the other twitching near the holster. His voice was tight. "License and registration, sir." Antoine didn't flinch. "Of course, officer. May I reach into my glove compartment to get them?" McKee nodded but didn't say a word. The tone was already set. A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the chirping of a distant lawn sprinkler. To anyone watching, it looked like another routine traffic stop. But if you've seen enough of these stories, you know what's really happening. A black man in a nice car, in a rich neighborhood, on a Tuesday afternoon, and a white cop already convinced something didn't add up. Antoine handed over the documents, clear and valid. No warrants, no flags, nothing out of order. But McKee didn't back off. His eyes scanned the vehicle's interior longer than necessary. The body cam caught it all. A long pause, a second glance at the rear seats. Then, a sharp breath through the nose, and a muttered, "Hang tight." What happened next may seem familiar, but this time, things would take a different turn. This wasn't just another example of bias. This would be the beginning of a case that would ruin one man's career and expose something far more sinister than anyone expected. McKee returned to the window, posture stiff, expression unreadable. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" he asked. Not, "Do you live here?" or "Are you headed somewhere?" But what are you doing here, as if Antoine's presence itself required justification? Antoine blinked, just once, and replied evenly, "Driving home from work." "Why?" McKee didn't answer. He leaned in slightly, eyes still sweeping the interior. "You been drinking?" he asked. "No, sir." "Any drugs in the car?" "No, sir." "Mind if I take a look?" There it was. Antoine didn't raise his voice, didn't get defensive, just said, "Actually, yes, I do mind. I don't consent to a search." That answer changed everything. McKee's face tightened. "You sure about that?" Antoine gave a polite nod. "Yes, officer. I know my rights." McKee paused. Then, as if on cue, he took a step back, tilted his head, and said it. "I smell something. Step out of the vehicle." The words weren't a request. They were a command. Antoine hesitated not out of fear, but calculation. He knew what came next. He turned off the engine, unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the door slowly, stepped out, hands visible, compliant. "I'm recording this," he said, holding up his phone. McKee's body cam was already on, but now the balance shifted. Neighbors on their porches took notice. A woman across the street grabbed her phone and began filming. A teenager on a bike paused, watching from a distance. McKee didn't like the attention. "Back away from the vehicle," he barked. Antoine did, but his gaze stayed steady, voice calm. "You said you smelled something. What exactly do you think is in my car?" McKee ignored the question. Instead, he radioed for backup, saying loudly, "We've got a non-compliant suspect refusing a lawful search." That was a lie, and the camera knew it. But lies only need seconds to become headlines. Antoine stood with both palms out, his phone still rolling. "I'm not resisting. I've cooperated fully. More bystanders film now." The tension was spreading like static. What began as a questionable traffic stop was evolving into a flashpoint. Type "watched" in the comments if you've ever witnessed something like this. Because at this moment, nobody, not Antoine, not McKee, not the crowd, knew just how twisted this story was about to get. The second unit hadn't arrived yet, but Officer McKee wasn't waiting. Antoine stood beside the car, silent, tense, and clearly recording. "Last chance," McKee muttered. "Do you consent to a vehicle search?" Antoine responded evenly, "I already said no." That should have ended it right there. But it didn't. McKee walked to the driver's side door and opened it anyway. No warrant, no probable cause, no consent, just a badge and the arrogance to ignore everything the law was supposed to protect. "You can't do that," Antoine said, raising his voice for the first time. McKee didn't answer. The body cam caught it all: plain, deliberate, and illegal. To the growing crowd, this looked like what it had always looked like. Another cop escalating, another black man violated, another video that would go viral with hashtags and heartbreak. The comments online were already writing themselves. Pulled over for being black. Illegal search caught on camera. McKee needs to be fired. But then something happened that shifted the entire narrative. McKee popped the trunk and paused. The camera showed his hand resting on a black duffel bag. He unzipped it slowly, expecting gym clothes or tools. What he found instead stopped him cold. A hard case marked "Property of DOJ," sealed. Next to it, a zippered pouch containing half a dozen USB drives. Tucked into the side pocket, several manila folders bound with rubber bands, labeled with first names and what looked like dates. Still, nothing conclusive. Could have been work files, right? But something about it all felt off. McKee rummaged further and pulled out a small plastic sleeve holding 4 driver's licenses, each with a different name, all with the same face. Antoine's face. He blinked, squinted, flipped through them again. One license was from Ohio, another from Nevada. All legit looking, all quietly unsettling. The body cam caught the change in McKee's breathing, shorter, faster now. This wasn't what he expected. He looked back at Antoine, who stood motionless, unreadable. From the outside, it still looked like abuse of power, a white cop tearing through a black man's car. But the camera didn't lie, and McKee's voice was suddenly different, lower, tense. "Dispatch," he said quietly. "I need a supervisor at my location, immediately." He wasn't sure what he had found, but he knew he wasn't supposed to find it like this. The backup arrived 10 minutes later. Sergeant Delaney stepped out of her cruiser and caught the look on McKee's face before he even said a word. He handed her the sealed case, the USB drives, and the stack of IDs without a sentence of explanation. She opened the folders, flipped through the contents, and froze. What she saw turned her stomach. It wasn't just names and dates. It was photos, headshots of young people, some barely in their teens, notes in shorthand, GPS coordinates, surveillance images. One folder included printouts of online conversations, social media screenshots, private messages, explicit ones. Delaney closed the folder slowly and looked up. "Where did you find this?" McKee gestured to the duffel bag in the trunk. I searched the car," he admitted. He didn't give consent, but something felt off. Delaney stared at him. "You realize this was an unlawful search, right?" McKee nodded once, like a man who understood too late that he'd just stepped into something far larger than his badge. Antoine stood calmly on the curb, hands still visible, phone still recording. "Is there a problem?" he asked, voice level. McKee didn't respond. Delaney walked over instead. "Sir, we're going to need to detain you for questioning. You're not under arrest at this time, but we need to secure the evidence." Antoine didn't resist, didn't protest, just slipped the phone into his pocket and turned around with his hands behind his back. He almost looked prepared. As the cuffs clicked shut, the energy in the air changed. This wasn't just a cop stepping out of line. This wasn't just a traffic stop gone sideways. This was something else, something darker. The bystanders who had been filming grew quiet. One woman asked, "What's going on?" Another said, "Why aren't they letting him go?" Nobody had an answer yet. McKee stood to the side, eyes fixed on the ground. He wasn't thinking about racial optics anymore. He was thinking about what he had just found and what it meant. In every other story like this, the cop was the villain, the black man the victim. But the folders told a different story. The drives were being logged into evidence. The sealed case was headed for federal hands, and Antoine Reddick was no longer just the man who got pulled over. He was the reason McKee's career and something much bigger was about to implode. The silence in the cruiser was heavy. Antoine Reddick sat in the back seat, handcuffed but calm, eyes locked forward like a man used to waiting things out. McKee stood off to the side of the road while Sergeant Delaney called it in. "Run the ID. Antoine Marcus Reddick, DOB, the 21st of June, 2079. The dispatcher on the other end of the line hesitated longer than normal. Then, "Hold for supervisor access." That never meant anything good. A pause. Then a voice came back, different tone, different cadence. "We're accessing sealed records. Please confirm location and detainment status." Delaney glanced at McKee. "Confirmed. Subject is detained. Evidence in possession." "Repeat. Sealed records?" The line crackled. "Yes. Sealed juvenile file out of Louisiana. Adult convictions in Texas pled down. Multiple aliases flagged by DHS in Nevada and Georgia. He was on parole until 2019. Offenses involve contact with minors. Files were suppressed following a plea agreement. Confirming known aliases now." Every word was like ice water down the spine. Delaney's eyes narrowed. Why wasn't he flagged at initial license scan? The answer was blunt. Used a clean alias. The ID isn't fake, but the name is. Driver's license linked to a legal change filed in 2020 under sealed order. Only federal access would have triggered it. In other words, Antoine Reddick had scrubbed himself out of the system, just well enough to avoid standard detection, but not well enough to stay invisible forever. McKee leaned against his cruiser, arms folded, staring at the pavement like it had betrayed him. He wasn't feeling vindicated. He was feeling something worse. The creeping realization that his impulsive, unlawful stop had uncovered something massive, something real, but the way he had done it might unravel everything. Delaney closed the laptop and muttered, "Jesus Christ." Antoine's calm wasn't bravado. It was calculation. He'd played this game before, only this time, he lost. And the department, they weren't ready for what came next. Because now the story wasn't just about civil rights. It wasn't about race. It was about a man who had quietly slipped through every crack in the system until one bad traffic stop by one reckless officer dragged everything into the light. The clip hit the internet at 6:13 p.m. A shaky 90-second phone video posted to Twitter by a woman across the street. No context, no explanation, just the optics. A white officer yelling at a calm, well-dressed black man during a traffic stop in a wealthy suburb. The video didn't show the search. It didn't show the duffel bag. It didn't show the folders. It ended just as Antoine stepped out of the car with his hands raised and McKee reached for his cuffs. That's all the internet needed. By 7 p.m., it had 600,000 views. By 9, number West Haven stop was trending nationwide. The captions wrote themselves, "Here we go again. Driving while black. Another power-tripping cop harasses an innocent man." Activists, influencers, civil rights attorneys all shared the clip. They didn't wait for facts. They didn't need to. The image was familiar. Too familiar. Local news picked it up by 10. National news followed by midnight. The mayor's office issued a vague statement about community values and commitment to transparency. Protesters gathered outside the West Haven Police Department before dawn. Handmade signs, chants, demands for accountability. Someone spray-painted McKee equals racist on the station's front steps. Inside, the mood was panic. The Bodycam footage hadn't been reviewed yet. The sealed evidence hadn't been processed. The department's public information officer had no answers, just a viral clip and a name, Officer Darren McKee. By noon, McKee was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. No pay, no statement, just silence. He didn't protest, he didn't speak, he knew the game now. In the court of public opinion, he was already guilty. What no one outside the department knew yet, what hadn't leaked, was the bombshell in the cruiser's trunk. The folders, the IDs, the drives, the sealed federal case just beginning to surface. But in the digital age, perception outruns reality by miles. And by the time the truth came out, it might not matter at all. By the next morning, Darren McKee's name was everywhere. Not just in headlines, but in comments, threads, and furious social media posts. His badge number, his home address, the Facebook profile of his wife, Melissa. Photos of his kids blurred at first, then not at all. He was being tried in the only courtroom that didn't care about evidence, the internet, and the verdict had already been decided. People called his house non-stop. Voicemails filled with slurs, threats, and screams. Someone sent a pizza with a note that said, "Choke on it, pig." His wife's phone was flooded with messages, some pitying, most venomous. How does it feel to sleep next to a racist? Tell your kids their dad ruined a man's life. The school district called Melissa at 11:42 a.m. to say both children were being kept in the office for safety reasons. By the end of the day, she had pulled them out entirely. The mayor gave a press conference flanked by community leaders and local clergy. "We are horrified by what we've seen. Officer McKee's behavior is under full investigation. We stand with our black residents and condemn all forms of racial profiling." The department issued a statement too, but not to support McKee. Officer McKee's actions are not representative of our values. No one mentioned the sealed evidence. No one mentioned the investigation still unfolding behind the scenes. On television, pundits called for reform. This is why we need civilian oversight. Qualified immunity must go. The video ran on a loop. They played it with dramatic music, slow motion, commentary, always cutting just before the search began, always ending at the moment that served the narrative best. McKee stayed silent. On legal advice, he didn't speak to media, didn't post, didn't explain. But silence wasn't protection, it was just gasoline. The online mob filled in the blanks with fury and fiction. Some said he had drawn his weapon. Others said Antoine was dragged from the car. None of it was true, but that didn't matter. In a world where likes move faster than facts, the only thing that mattered was the outrage, and it was everywhere. 3 days after the video went viral, the department's internal affairs unit released the full body cam footage under public pressure. But what they expected to be a routine compliance move turned into a bombshell revelation. It began exactly as the viral clip had shown. Flashing lights, McKee's aggressive tone, Antoine's steady calm. But then the footage kept going. Past the moment of cuffing, past the point, the internet had already shut its ears. What came next stunned everyone who watched it. The footage showed the illegal search. Yes. But it also showed McKee's stunned reaction as he uncovered the sealed DOJ case file, the burner phones, the fake IDs. His breathing changed. His voice dropped. Then came the folders, faces of minors, locations, digital drives that would later be confirmed to contain material classified under federal child exploitation statutes. None of this had been seen publicly until now. Alongside the footage, the department released a joint statement from the FBI confirming that Antoine Reddick had been under active investigation for months. The traffic stop, while unauthorized in its method, had unintentionally exposed evidence that fast-tracked a multi-state trafficking probe. The USB drives were matched to case files across Georgia, Nevada, and Texas. Names on the folders correlated to known missing persons. Some of the files were coded, others were explicit, all of it sickening. Antoine wasn't just hiding under the radar, he was working it, under aliases, protected by loopholes and sealed records. His ID was clean because it had been changed through legal channels after a plea deal. He was no ghost, he was a shapeshifter. And McKee, despite the illegal search, had uncovered something real, something monstrous. The media scrambled. Some outlets ran the full tape. Others doubled down on their original coverage. Commentators suddenly backpedaled, blaming incomplete information. The mayor's office issued a clarification. The police union issued a statement, now in defense of McKee. The evidence changes the context significantly, but for Darren McKee, the damage had already been done. His face was burned into the nation's memory as the racist cop before anyone knew who he had actually pulled over. And now the truth was out. The stop may have been unlawful, but the man behind the wheel was far from innocent. The press conference was scheduled for noon. By 11:30, the lobby of the West Haven Municipal Building was packed with reporters, cameras, and silent tension. The police chief stood at the podium, flanked by the FBI liaison and the city's legal counsel. Notably absent were the mayor and any city council members who had previously called for McKee's termination. What followed was not an apology, it was a calculated shift in messaging. The body cam footage tells a more complete story than initially reported, the chief began. While Officer McKee's decision to conduct a warrantless search was a serious policy violation, the subsequent discovery of federal-level evidence tied to an ongoing child exploitation investigation reframes the nature of the incident entirely. Behind him, still frames from the footage appeared on the screen. The folders, the fake IDs, the USB drives. One photo showed the duffel bag open in the trunk. No commentary, just the visual weight of reality. Public opinion began to shift, but not with the same velocity that had condemned McKee. The outrage machine had already moved on to its next target. There were no viral hashtags in his defense. No trending topics titled, "He was right." Just quiet retractions and half-hearted editorials admitting that new information complicates initial assumptions. Some of the loudest critics simply deleted their posts. The same media outlets that had scorched McKee's name now walked their stories back with a fraction of the original fervor. They used words like emerging evidence and ongoing investigation. No one said we got it wrong. No one said we ruined this man's life in 48 hours. The court of public opinion doesn't have a correction column. As for the public, some were relieved, some were angry. Many didn't know what to feel. The story had flipped too fast, the narrative turned inside out. The cognitive dissonance was real. A cop who violated procedure had stopped a predator. A black man, wrongfully profiled, wasn't so innocent after all. Nothing fit into clean lines anymore, but one thing was clear. Darren McKee's name would never mean the same thing again. Not in this town, not online, not anywhere. 3 weeks later, the federal indictment was unsealed. Antoine Reddick faced 11 counts, including possession of child pornography, identity fraud, conspiracy to exploit minors, and interstate trafficking with intent to distribute exploitative materials. The DOJ press release confirmed that the traffic stop had accelerated an investigation already months in motion. The materials found in the duffel bag matched data from open cases in 4 states. Victim recovery efforts were underway. The evidence was overwhelming. The aliases linked to online accounts used to lure minors. The USB drives contained encrypted chat logs, metadata, and even geotagged photos. One ID belonged to a man listed as deceased in another state. Another had been used to rent vehicles that crossed state lines near missing persons reports. What McKee had found wasn't circumstantial. It was a window into something calculated and horrifying. McKee, meanwhile, returned to the department, not through ceremony, but through paperwork. No one shook his hand. No one welcomed him back. His locker had been emptied by mistake. His email was deactivated due to an oversight. The chief met with him privately and explained the department was under pressure from both sides. "You can come back," he said, "but don't expect a parade." He didn't. And he didn't stay long, either. 2 months after his reinstatement, McKee filed a defamation suit against 3 national media outlets, 2 local journalists, and 1 nonprofit that had published a now-deleted Cop Watch alert falsely accusing him of brutality. His legal team didn't argue that the search had been lawful, it hadn't, but that the reporting had presented an edited narrative with reckless disregard for unfolding facts. Internal emails and publication timestamps showed they had received the full footage before choosing to publish selectively. 3 of the 6 parties settled quietly. Undisclosed amounts. No formal apologies. Just signatures and silence. McKee didn't post about it. He didn't gloat. But he also didn't forget. The money didn't fix what had been done, but it funded his exit. He filed retirement paperwork 6 weeks after the last settlement. Early pension, confidentiality clauses, a clean exit from a job that had defined him and nearly destroyed him. The headlines didn't update, the Twitter threads didn't correct, but the record buried somewhere in a courthouse database told the truth. Darren McKee had made a bad call, and still, he had stopped a monster. The story faded from headlines, as they always do. Another scandal took its place. Another outrage filled the feed. But beneath the churn of daily news, one case left a lingering ache, a quiet, unresolved discomfort. Not just about what happened to McKee, but what almost didn't happen at all. What if he hadn't searched the car? What if, frustrated by a lack of probable cause and fearing another internal complaint, he had sent Antoine Reddick on his way? No search, no folder, no discovery, no FBI involvement. The duffel bag would have remained closed, the drives untouched. The names of missing children undocumented, their faces fading into cold files and broken families, all because a cop followed the rules and let the devil walk free. The thought haunted everyone involved. Even those who had initially called for McKee's head now asked themselves, silently and without tweets, did we almost protect a predator in the name of justice? Because this wasn't just about one man. It was about the culture, one that demands instant conclusions from 30-second clips, one that prioritizes appearance over process, outrage over verification. We built a world where any image can be weaponized, any context ignored, and any truth delayed until it no longer matters. Outrage is easy. Nuance is hard. Some civil rights groups quietly admitted that the case had complicated implications. Some activists walked back their earlier posts, but others doubled down, arguing that McKee still violated protocol and should have faced discipline. They weren't wrong, but they weren't entirely right either. The deeper question remained: how many Reddicks are out there, shielded not by clever aliases or legal loopholes, but by a system now terrified to act, to search, to question, to intervene? How many officers, burned by backlash, choose silence over instinct? When justice is preempted by virality, we risk creating two kinds of victims, the ones we overlook and the ones we punish for getting it right the wrong way. Darren McKee submitted his resignation exactly 6 months to the day after the traffic stop. No press conference, no interview, no send-off, just a quietly signed letter, a cleared-out locker, and a name still whispered in every briefing room like a warning. He didn't leave because he was ashamed. He left because he understood something the rest of the world refused to say out loud. The system wasn't built to survive this kind of contradiction. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a villain. He was both, depending on what part of the video you chose to believe. He broke protocol, but he uncovered a predator. He violated one man's rights to protect a dozen others. He was condemned before the truth came out, and by the time it did, the damage was irreversible. The public had moved on. The outrage had cooled. The apologies never came. He got to walk away. Antoine Reddick didn't. But the real loss wasn't just a job. It was a system that couldn't admit it got something partially wrong and partially right at the same time. This story will be used by different people for different purposes. Some will cite it as proof that over-policing targets black men. Others will use it to justify illegal searches in the name of gut instinct. Both will miss the point, because the real question isn't about one traffic stop. It's about every system, legal, cultural, digital, that buckles under complexity, that demands immediate answers, that trades due process for public performance. How do we hold officers accountable without assuming guilt from a thumbnail? How do we protect civil rights without protecting those who weaponize them? How do we balance outrage with evidence, race with facts, instincts with laws? How do we balance accountability with fairness for everyone involved? If you've made it this far, ask yourself this: when the next video drops, when the next name trends, when the next narrative surges ahead of the truth, will we have learned anything at all? This case was brutal, but this case on the right-hand side is even more insane.
Seeking the truth is our ultimate mission. We dig deep to hold power to account, relying entirely on facts and data. Remember, the records never lie. Thank you for tuning in and supporting our work.